Things was airing, that was what I was doing these holidays.
I know, right?
But
Yeah, we totally felt the same way, but happy to do it. Because
yeah,
like, at this point, you're so invested
uh-huh.
I thought you were
in
going to
it
say
that
you're
it's,
so
yeah.
old that it's just,
Well, that's
what are the
true.
holidays anyway?
What are
That's
they?
right.
What indeed?
That's right.
Did you? Well, we can talk about this during the show. I have a few questions just around the actual watching of the show itself.
Ah,
Oh,
okay, yeah. I think that'll naturally come up in the discussion. And it looks like we are live on YouTube right now. So welcome to anyone who may be joining us. We're going to be getting into our Stranger Things season 5 part 2 recap, reaction, and review in just a moment. But yeah, really excited to be here with y'all.
yeah. Yeah, this feels like a good way to start 2026
It
too.
does.
Yeah. Just talking about pop
Cause
culture.
cause Hawkins may be in the right side up now, but we're not.
Man, I don't even know what year it is, what day it is. I feel like I blinked and 18 months went by. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm feeling good getting into this, and Pam is actually having her whole neighborhood is having power issues, which is wild. It's
Yeah.
I said, oh, now your neighborhood's been taken over by the upside down or something.
Oh no, Dr. K got over there
Dr.
and was
K.
like, we're going to start again in the Pacific
Uh-oh.
Northwest.
Yeah,
With Pam.
with Pam offended the military with all of her comments on our most recent Stranger Things episode. So, but
Well, I think we're going to get into it whenever y'all are ready.
let's do it.
Do you want
And
to
is that
kick
me?
us off? Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. There should be like a plushy animal that we have for like the person leading the discussion, and we mail it. It's like I can hold the plush, so I'm leading. Okay, great. We're fine. Welcome back to What the Hype. This week on our show, or this time, we are at last concluding Stranger Things as a show because the final entry, the finale of season 5, has now just over New Year's aired. Some of us saw it at home, some of us saw it in theaters. We'll get into that. But now that the show has been brought to a 10-year close, we will be wrapping our discussion on that. And cheers to those who are viewing and listening live, as well as my co hosts this week, Laura and Micah. Hey, guys.
Hey.
How's
Hey,
it going? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's either 1989 or 2026. I know which I prefer it to be, but
I was going to
we got.
say, if we had a vote, I feel like the 80s would win out here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But
You know, there are pros and cons to everything. Granted, we're all 80s babies.
We are.
So, you know, decade of our birth. Although, do any of us like properly remember the 80s? We might have covered that already. But
kind of barely. One or
yeah.
two inklings, maybe.
Well, I'm a little bit older, so I was 82, so I was early 80s, so I should have some
Oh, so
recollection
you
of that
you were a
decade.
little kid. Yeah.
You were
Were
like
you
Holly's age on paper.
right. 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not retconning her character and aging her up or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but no, I'm
Funny.
just feeling really good because however we felt about the final season, I feel like nothing went horribly awry with it. I think that from beginning to end, Stranger Things will be viewed as a show that did not shoot from the hip, not know where it was going, not have anything interesting to say, or anything like that. I think we can probably agree that Stranger Things avoided some of the pitfalls that long-running television series do fall into. Would we agree with that?
I think for the most part, yes. I don't want to get into like being super like I don't want to jump into critique at the top because I think there's a lot to like about the season and I think there's a lot to celebrate about it.
Mhm.
I do I did get a sense, especially with this season, that this was a show that maybe did it need to be 5 seasons? Like, was there a more streamlined way to tell this story? I think that's a valid critique that most successful TV shows run into because anytime something is that popular and it's making that much money, of course, the company, Netflix in this case, is going to want them to run Stranger Things for as long as they possibly can.
Mm.
So I don't know if the Duffers' original vision was for this to run for 5 seasons or if there were some attempts made to like stretch story out and maybe add elements to it to make it last a little longer. I do think there is a way this could have been a bit more streamlined than it ended up being, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that got added is bad. I think it just created like a time crunch in the 5th season in order for them to like close so many loops and provide so many answers.
Mm.
So that's like my high level critique of it, but I still again, like I don't want to come into this cuz there's a lot of discourse online where it's like two camps, like the camp of like, oh my god, this season sucked, there's nothing redeeming about it, if you liked it you're wrong. And then there's the, oh my god, Stranger Things apologists, this show is absolutely stunning and perfect and it never did anything wrong. And I take
Mm.
issue with both of those takes
Mhm.
because it removes the ability to really be able to have like a true analysis and discussion about where the show did well and where maybe it didn't stick the landing. I think it's okay to live in the nuance, which that, we don't have much of that these days.
Mm. Micah, what were your thoughts?
I will start off by saying I thoroughly enjoyed the finale. And I think that 10 years is a really long time to have to reflect back on with a show. And I know that there were a lot of different things that this show in particular came up against, including the pandemic. My one critique, if I could, was I didn't think that we needed part one, part two, and part three. There was nothing for me in part two that you couldn't have included in part one. Not saying we didn't need that many episodes, but I don't think part two stood alone.
Mm.
There was nothing that
Mm-mm.
I left part two saying, oh man, I'm excited for the finale. I left part one excited for how this was going to end. And maybe we can jump into talking a little bit more about those 3 episodes in particular. I know there was a lot of resolution,
Mm.
which understandably before we got to the finale was needed, but I think the build up to the second part, I had more of an expectation of something big happening, and I don't really feel
Mm-hmm.
like I got it. That would be my one critique, but overall, I love the finale and the way that everything resolved itself in the end. I love that we kind of had this 45-minute epilogue because
Yeah.
I kept expecting, okay, when is Vecna going to show up? When are things going to start to get dark again? And we didn't get that, which part of me thoroughly enjoyed because that's always the expectation is that you're going to be left with, oh no, right? Like there's going to
Yeah.
be something where you're going to say, wait, hold on. This isn't actually over.
It was nice to see the show, especially one that's like as long running as this and has spent so much time with these characters that they managed to do what we're calling in our notes like the epilogue scene, but like really when they're graduating from high school to spend some time with the characters when they're happy and not fighting something. And I would consider it kind of a victory lap on the part of the writers. Like, hey, we did the big thing, the horrible thing. Like that part of the show is over. Now we're going to show even where some of them end up. We're going to show Steve Harrington coaching Little League. We're going to, and some of it feels like a nod, and some of it feels a bit like an in joke. But at the same time, getting to spend time with the characters when there's not the threat of Vecna looming over them, and actually spending time with them, not just as the prelude to another big thing going wrong, like you're saying, Micah, felt really nice. It felt really sweet. And it's like, oh, there might even be a show here if there weren't all these eldritch horrors all around. Like
Right.
the characters are strong enough at this point, they've been built up enough that we actually like seeing them and we care for their well-being.
I do like that they made a point to kind of close the book on our principal cast of characters and really show us kind of what was next for them. I know there were a lot of fan theories out there about how the show was going to end. I think a really popular one was that it was going to end with them all still being 11 years old in the basement, and this was just their D&D campaign that they had just wrapped up, so it was like
Love
all
it.
in their heads. And I was really glad they didn't go that route with it, because that would really just undo the stakes for literally everything in the show. So I like that they gave the characters that like warm send off. I will say it was giving me like Return of the King, Lord of the Rings, like we're going to have 5 different endings to this
Mm.
episode before the episode actually ends vibes. Like, cause I was like, okay, so we're just like covering each grouping, right? One at a time for the most part. And that, we had a 2 hour finale, but really 45 minutes of that was like post climax,
Yeah.
right? So I've seen some people have critique of that, of feeling like the climax should have been more all encompassing of the episode, and kind of let the rest of the wrap up kind of be more brief. But I don't know. I don't feel as strongly about that. But I will say when I was watching it, it did kind of have like felt like I was in stop start traffic a little bit. Because to Micah's point, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it was like,
Oh,
this is too neat. Like I don't know. It just feels like there's still something. There's some shoe that's been unturned here. Even with Robin doing her bit at the radio station and being like, "Oh, everything's great." It's like we're in a. She even made the point. She was like, "It's like a different Hawkins," and I was like, "Ooh, are they setting up for
oh,
this to be like, actually, it is a totally different Hawkins, because when the wormhole collapsed, they got like rubber banded into a different dimension or something like that." But it just doesn't seem like that's where they're taking this at
Mhm.
this point. It really seemed like a true wrap up.
The part that I really liked about it though was that you were experiencing really the end of innocence, the end of
Mm-hmm.
childhood for so many of these characters. It was all about moving on, and we got that. Also with the adult characters, right? We got it with Joyce and Hopper. We got it with on top of the radio station with kind of the four core
older kids.
adults, young
Yeah.
adults, and then we got it with kind of the core five there too. So you know, there's a part of me that just feels attached to that, especially having grown up in that time period. And, you kind of harken back to it. Graduation is also kind of a culmination and end of,
Yeah.
and I feel like that was the message that the Duffers were trying to convey, that this story is over.
Yep.
It's ended. And who knows, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, things have a way of circling back, but it felt final.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point, even though I would agree that things felt final, before we go to a break here, I do want to talk about the fate of 11 being left kind of open ended. Because here's the thing, when you're getting all of these answers, what college do these characters end up going to? You know, all that stuff, it can feel pretty, I don't know, straightforward, uninventive, whatever. It's like, okay, so that's the answer. But to choose to leave the fate of maybe one of the most iconic characters, certainly like the main crux of this whole show, up in the air, whether she's alive, dead, trapped in an alternate universe, simply in our universe, but roaming and hiding, like, that's a bold choice. And I like that element, like when you guys are talking about will the other shoe drop, for me, that was sustained by this, you know, is 11 alive? Will we get confirmation as to one way or the other if 11 is alive? That was what I was kind of holding my breath for during the show's 7 endings. And we didn't get that. And you know what? I'm actually not sad about that, because I think it's ultimately a bolder choice to present, as Mike does in his sort of theory, like, oh, here's one way that Elle could have survived. We see it filmed as if it's true. And then it's like, we don't know. Maybe that happened instead.
Yeah, and I think the Duffers have since come out and said that was intentional. They really want viewers to decide for themselves, what do you think happened? And to that point, we actually have looks like Rin, who's with us here on YouTube. Looks like they're taking the Elle is alive perspective and saying, I'm having a hard time accepting Elle's fate. It feels like I can't rewatch the show now, knowing it'll be too sad to see every time Elle fights for a happier future, just to know that she ends up alone.
Ooh, but she was smiling. She's happy to be alone. Well, she's no longer being chased, I think, is the point.
She finally has freedom. Like, if you accept that version of her fate, that is the true version of Elle who has freedom. She's never properly had it before that. So I think that is the happy ending.
For her.
And she's got waterfalls, baby.
Yeah, they've been taught. She went chasing waterfalls. But no, I mean,
agree.
yeah.
You do want to see Mike happy, ultimately, too. And, you know, I think that the ending where Elle is traveling is not definitive to she will never interact with. Well, we did not see Mike on his deathbed, you know, of an old age, having never re-interacted with Elle. That was not a scene that was shown. So I think that those who believe that Elle is right side up, you know, through some clever and trickery and all that stuff, is simply going to come to him, just not right away.
What do y'all think? Which ending do you buy into?
Let us know.
Oh, I thought you were asking.
I'm asking the two of you.
Yeah.
Oh, write in. Send an email to us. We'll send an email to each other about what we think really happened.
So
I don't know. I kind of
okay.
like the idea of Elle wandering the abyss. The interesting thing for me is that there's still, like, most of everything was wrapped up, but for me, there's still this consciousness that's out there. It's whatever was piloting the giant creature. It's Vecna's boss, you know, essentially, that's like, was not really destroyed, thoroughly unalived for a bit, but not, you don't get the sense that that's fully gone or couldn't, like, still be out there. So for me, there's some question as to if Elle is stuck in the abyss, because the upside down is not a thing anymore. If Elle is stuck in the other world with no wormhole to get back, then what is that future like with her there? Could she make her own waterfalls? That kind of a thing. And I find that ultimately to be really interesting from a character perspective of, if she's alone and can shape the world in a way that we kind of saw Vecna doing, like, what would that look like? And so I'm kind of pro team Elle is safe, whether that's in the abyss where there's nothing, or on Earth where she has to be careful who she shows she's existing. As long as she's safe, I'm happy. What do you think?
I think that for Mike, it's important for him right now to believe the story that he told.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what actually happened. And I think that Elle is actually gone. That's the way that I interpreted the finale. And when I saw the scene with her, I thought to myself, she's in Ireland, she's in Scotland,
Yeah, you've
with the
been there.
waterfalls and just that kind of beautiful scenery. But Eric, I did really like what you just said about who knows if that's actually the real world, or is it a creation of her own mind because she is in the abyss? Did she remake the abyss in her own view after what
Yeah.
happened to Vecna and to the Mind Flayer? We don't know. And I think that's the great part of it, is that it's open to interpretation. Laura, as you said, the Duffers have come out and said that it's for the viewer to make their own judgment. And I did want to go back to Mike for just a second, because there were a lot of standout performances in this season. I thought, in particular, in the finale, that Finn Wolfhard was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he really showed up. And I think this is one of the constraints that the show had to come up against. And there's, like you called out earlier, Micah, there's a lot of reasons that it ends up this way, but they had so many characters that they needed to give screen time to. And it didn't feel like we got a ton of time with Mike to really let him stand out before the finale. So it was a treat to see that again, because we spent way more time with Mike earlier on in the series. He was more of a focal point
Yeah.
than he got to be in these last couple of seasons, which made sense for where they took the story. But it was really nice to actually see him be able to emote substantially, and
Yeah.
also to see the stakes of you know, the prospect of him losing Elle and that relationship. Because we didn't, also, I would say, in this season there wasn't a ton of time to really build on the Mike and Elle relationship. There were legitimately times where I had to be like, oh yeah, those two are dating. But like you just didn't, I don't feel like I feel like if somebody went into this season not having watched anything else, I don't think they would know those characters were dating. Necessarily. Like,
Yeah. That
they
makes
just
sense.
didn't have a ton of time for chemistry. There was so much that had to get done. So
Well, and it's war. Everyone
Yeah.
had a place to be and all that stuff. But yeah, you do have to kind of be reminded. Oh yeah, they're dating. To that point, I'll say we're going to talk about characters sort of towards the end of our discussion. But there were moments, certainly. I think it's a good problem to have where they have too many good cast members, like too many good characters that you want to see more of. The science teacher ultimately gets involved, but I still wanted more of his reactions when they were in the Upside Down briefly, like some of those things, those like wonky things, or even keeping with Mike, when Mike and Karen Wheeler, his mom, reunite in the hospital. I wanted to see even just the shot of their reaction seeing each other, and it doesn't happen. And actually, I was pissed. I forget what the camera was focusing on instead. It's two other characters that just reunited. But I was like, where the hell is Karen and Mike's reunion? And then, like, the next shot showed them already together in mid conversation. And I was like, like that. Like, I
Literally.
wanted to see what, like, they're together. The writing is fine that those two characters would see each other and gravitate toward each other, but we weren't shown that. So it's like they're having to constantly sacrifice showcasing two characters for showing another two characters instead, and it, like, you don't get everything that you want out of it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
There's a really great scene, and I'm pretty sure it was just something that was done as an additional cut, of Mike tossing laundry to his mom in the hospital laundry room.
Oh my god.
I'll have to send it through.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But
Oh,
I get what you're saying. What about Mr. Wheeler? I mean, we see him at graduation. Thankfully,
yeah,
he's
he
okay.
survived.
But no
Well,
love
he
for
wasn't a
Mr.
deep enough
Wheeler.
character to get more time with.
No, I think that was always kind of the joke with Mr. Wheeler he in particular was so disconnected from everything going on around him that it kind of felt like the joke carried on because we knew he was in the hospital, but then we visited Mrs. Wheeler in the hospital, but we did not visit Ted.
Nope.
And nobody talked about him at all the entire time. We're talking about Holly, we're talking about mom, right? But nobody talked about dad. And then we just get to see, oh, he's at graduation, so I guess he made it.
Guess he's fine. You know, it's like it says something when your character's main character development comes from a Target commercial. Like, you know, it's like, have you guys seen this with Mr. Wheeler and the guy from the video store at the Target checkout? But like, yeah, I don't know. He's just, I appreciate that they kept sort of the joke running, as you said, Laura. So we are going to pause for an ad break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about the big answers because we did get them in the second half of season 5 of Stranger Things. So stick right with us here on What the Hype, and we'll be right back. And we're back. All right, guys, let's talk about the big series-long answers that we now have and can definitively say from watching the final of Stranger Things. Okay, we got the answer within the last 4 episodes of what the Upside Down truly is. Whereas before, I think we were thinking it's a parallel dimension, kind of an alternate opposite dimension to our own, which worked in the earlier seasons. We now understand it to be a wormhole between two, it's the inside of a wormhole between 2 separate dimensions of our town, Hawkins, Indiana, and our world, and this abyss, where apparently all of these creatures that we associate with the Upside Down came from. Were we interested? Were we excited for this reveal? Do we feel it's explained properly insofar as something as crazy as a wormhole can be explained?
This is where I feel like, going back to Laura's earlier point, you probably could have wrapped the story in fewer seasons, because the addition of the wormhole, I don't know that it was necessary. We spent so much time building up the Upside Down. I really thought that we were going to see the Upside Down start to fuse itself with the real world. And I feel a little bit cheated on that front. I don't know that you needed the Abyss. I think it was all explained very well.
Yeah.
But this was one of those things where I would have liked to have seen more from the Upside. Like, we spent 4 seasons, as I said earlier, building up this
Upside Down
space.
Yeah.
For it to not hold as much relevance as we initially thought.
It's a bait and switch, but not always a fun one.
Honestly, I feel like if they wanted to do this, if this was always the plan, I really think that the wormhole and the abyss reveal should have come sooner, so that we had, as viewers, we had time to get used to the idea and there was more time to explore what that meant. Because it kind of doesn't feel like it meant anything. It was like, oh, there's another, it's like Inception. There's another layer of time and space that we're stepping into.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was a pretty massive lore dump happening in the 11th hour of the series that I think, again, if they wanted to do that, that's fine. But they should have begun building that up much sooner so that it actually felt substantive and like something where there were stakes and something that we would care about.
I do agree.
I think it didn't have enough time to breathe.
Yeah, as viewers, we're much more attached to the Upside Down, and we kind of got comfortable thinking of that as an alternate dimension, and so, I think the reveal is well explained. I like the way that you said that, Micah, where it's like, okay, so like, yeah, we got an explanation that made sense and was suitable, but why would you kind of do that? What's like the greater intention between, like, why couldn't this intelligence, whatever, really just be from the Upside Down? And then some other part of the Upside Down is where the bad guy is. You know.
Exactly. And you probably could argue in a way they're all an extension of each other, but it is you wanted to be able to find the big bad's lair, right? And it's like when you're playing a video game
Yeah.
and you realize, oh, we're not really at you know the dungeon that the big boss is in, right? There's another room
Yeah, the
or
princess is in another castle, as it
floor.
turns out.
Exactly. And I think we were led to believe for so long that the Upside Down was where Vecna was hiding out. It's where he was being able to kind of gather all of his strength, and then to get this twist with the Abyss. The only thing that I can think of is because of the fact that they were able to kind of catch Vecna off guard. That's why maybe we didn't get the reveal sooner of this kind of connectivity, because the more time that we have to spend with that, presumably the more time the characters have to spend with that, and presumably the more time Vecna would have to prepare to know that a potential attack would be coming. Like, he was taken completely off guard by this.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
my only thought.
I still, another thing that I struggle with here, and I really think that this is because this was introduced so late in the series. Again, I just don't think there was room for the concept to like breathe, to be able to fully like do it justice, and at least from a viewer perspective, for me to have a full understanding of like how everything works. But if we're to believe that the Abyss is actually the origin of all these creatures, the Demogorgons, the Demodogs, everything, and they're all a hive mind, it was kind of shocking to me that in the final fight, none of those guys showed up.
You know, that
Like,
that is a single perfect point, honestly. That if they really come from there, where are they defending?
right. Because if they're, I mean, like, they're all connected. So we've seen this before
Yeah.
when
They can open
Vecna.
a portal to where they need to go.
Exactly. So stuff like that doesn't quite land for me, and it made the final confrontation feel like the stakes weren't as high as they could have been. It wasn't all bad, but I just think that there was a lot of like established expectations about the way these creatures work and the way the hive mind works that
Yeah,
didn't show up in the final confrontation in the Abyss.
that's fair. I think that's fair. Although I have
wanna-
to say I love the conceit of having to like an upside down to the upside down. So they needed to like wait till the worlds were close enough, scale a tower.
Yeah.
Like that was cool as hell. It looked great and was just such a, I want to say larger than life. Like, how the hell is a regular person gonna traverse worlds? And then you watch these friends kind of brainstorm it. So many times they say we need a plan, then they get a plan, and you know what? It actually half works. And so I'm excited about like the scrappy nature of like, the Abyss as a concept of being so difficult to imagine getting to, and then we have these characters that really actually managed to pull it off is kind of exciting. To have it further away than the upside down is kind of exciting. But to your point, Laura, too, like they're pretty early on during the finale, Dr. K, or whatever we're calling her, Linda Hamilton's character, finds straight up just the written down plan of everything that's going on, and the military does not really intervene in the final battle. Like, I was fully expecting
Good.
there to be. Now there's a faction of the military that goes to the Hawkins lab and causes a ruckus, but they were already there before Dr. K sees the plans. So there wasn't a direct reaction to seeing what the plan was that would like have the military screw up the saving of the world. I was relieved, but at the same point, why is that scene existing, or why do you have that sort of reveal if it doesn't get an equal and opposite reaction?
Yeah. It was almost, okay, we're going to let them handle this, but let's also remember that she wants to tap into these powers, so presumably she would want Henry to stay
Yeah.
alive. So she would
And
want to
it's-
stop this all from happening.
And it's probably an oversight that her character doesn't get a death or really a follow up.
Or that anybody does
Yeah.
besides
Yeah,
Henry.
Well,
right.
and what a
Well, and
satisfying death it was.
I definitely want us to talk about Henry in a
Yeah.
moment, because Jamie Campbell Bower killed it. I mean,
I was
he was just phenomenal.
so like unexpectedly even, and I have high expectations for him. I was blown away, absolutely blown away, this season by Jamie Campbell Bower.
Yeah,
So
no, he was great. Go ahead though.
let's talk about so we really do get from start to finish a full origin story for not really just Vecna, but the subsidiary of that. It's like how 11 and 8 get their powers all ties back to Vecna. We see how Vecna, aka Henry, got his powers and how that ties back to essentially the abyss. What are we even how do we even begin to talk about something like this?
Well, first of all, I love how the setup was done for his origin story and what he was really afraid of.
Because part one, it's like hinted at that something horrible has happened to Henry, like as a kid
Yeah, in the cave
in the cave.
specifically, because he
Yeah,
was too afraid to go in there. That's why it was the safest hiding place for Max and all the kids, because he just couldn't go in there. And we learn that it's, ultimately the Mind Flayer is the real big bad, which I think a lot of fans accurately predicted ahead of time that, like, it's not actually Vecna who's the mastermind, it is the Mind Flayer. And the Mind Flayer was really kind of holding that over Henry to make him too afraid to go in that cave. He does get to overcome that fear kind of unintentionally because he's chasing Holly and the kids into the
to
cave,
get them. Yeah,
to get them. And he witnesses that event that so traumatized him as a child, when he, got in Vecna'd, if you were to say.
I like that a lot.
He first made contact with the Mind Flayer through that stone, that artifact.
Artifact is what I would
Yeah.
call it. I don't know
Yeah.
what the script might call it, but yeah, it's so interesting that Henry. Now here's a guy who even like actively chooses evil and says like, oh yeah, I chose the whole way. He wants us to believe that he chose his fate and to be bad, but it's such a strong redemption arc just to see that at one point he wasn't this evil little shit. And when we're introduced to him in the previous season with, Robert England playing his father who blinded himself to escape the evil of his son and the visions he was being forced to see, it's satisfying to know that at some point in his childhood, Henry was just a Boy Scout. He was just a scared little kid who was in way over his head something. And it's like, you know what, there's like a really good touchstone there between, and I loved when Will Byers says to him, "You were a vessel just like me." And this cyclical kind of nature of choosing bad and choosing to do bad. Let's break the cycle. Like any of that stuff. Like I was just loving everything that was being developed because ultimately I think the acting is strong enough from Henry that it's not just one dimensional and that there were multiple layers of decision making that went on that ultimately cause Henry to become Vecna and do everything horrible that he does.
Yeah. There's that great line that he has where he says, "We're one." And there's multiple meanings to that. He's referring to himself and the Mind Flayer, and he's also
Yeah.
number
He's
one.
one. He's got tattoo. He's
I
got
love that. Well, and
yeah.
what I also love about that too, you know, I I have to say, I think the Henry origin and sort of like the Henry backstory that we got trickled in throughout the season, that was my favorite part of the season. That was my favorite part of the story. And if anything, I wish we could have had a little more time just to really sit in that and let it breathe and let it grow. I know there's a whole stage play that
Yeah.
happens, that contains a lot of this information. too. And I think I would have appreciated getting more of that because it was such a rich backstory that explained so much. But I love that they didn't go the full redemption arc with
Mm.
Henry and have Will like save him. I
Yeah.
really love how in the end Henry was like, "Nah, I'm just a baddie and this is what I'm doing." Like cuz
What do
it
you expect from
yeah.
Grindelwald, though?
Right.
Oh well. Yeah, it's almost very Voldemorty too, where you're like, okay,
Yeah.
the kid had sort of a stacked deck against him, but he still chose to do bad, so that's why he's the big bad. It's very much, Vecna chooses this, which ultimately is what justifies his horrific death and decapitation at the hand of Mommy Dearest.
That
Which
I had to turn away at one point because that was getting intense.
that yeah, really, you turned away from all the hacking that
Well, I
Winona
watched
was
a few
doing.
of them, and I'm just like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of
Oh,
the Tootsie
geez.
Roll Pop
The
here?
spinal column. Yeah,
It
geez.
was
It
Well,
was it was
and
rough.
Winona got the one F-bomb of the entire series.
I did appreciate her sort of, since we just referenced Harry Potter, her Molly Weasley, not my daughter, you bitch moment. Did she say you effed with the wrong family?
yeah.
Um,
Can I wanted to go back though because you mentioned Will, and specifically, I wanted to ask how he got out of this unscathed because presumably he was still part of this whole hive mind. And when the mind flare is being destroyed, when Vecna is being destroyed, we don't see the same kind of reaction from him that we
mm,
do earlier on in this season when the Demogorgons are being attacked. Now, I'm wondering if that ties back to his whole coming out acceptance scene. And because he was able to do that, he's no longer vulnerable in the same way.
right, like he mastered the kind of disconnect there, where he was more susceptible when he was hiding so much about himself. Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I
when he
like
was
that idea
afraid.
as an
Yeah.
explanation. Yeah, yeah, when he was afraid. But you're right, like he doesn't double over in pain when Vecna or the big gigantic monster are dying. So that's interesting. And nor do we see, I think, a scene when the kids get unplugged from the Matrix. They have that. They all cough up the gray smoke, which goes
Yeah.
mysteriously into the sky. Like we also don't see, and Will has done that in the past, but we don't have that scene here. So
No. But
if
I
the link
think
is broken, yeah,
when Elle rescues him, that happens.
that does happen with Will.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought so.
okay, I'll believe it. I mistook
Yeah.
it.
No, I think so.
So then it's just that he's persevered and he managed to see enough behind the curtain to understand how everything was connected, and then kind of gets away.
Yeah, well, and I think too, this is where I mean, I was seeing like some pretty massive Stephen King parallels, like not even just the giant spider aspect of the final battle, but if you think about the climax to the TV miniseries of Stephen King's It, of course, the way the TV miniseries handles the climax of that story is not at all how the climax happens in the book, but that the whole concept in the story, in the original story, was that the kids were able to overcome because they weren't scared anymore. And that was the vibe I kept getting from that final climax was like everybody was able to do some small part in banishing the hive mind and vanishing Vecna because they weren't afraid of him anymore. And Will was really the core of that, right? Because he had done his self acceptance, which was what gave him the power to go Super Saiyan and, whip Vecna's ass halfway through the season. And ultimately, he got the acceptance from his family and friends. And I think that kind of seals the deal for him that he doesn't, like, Vecna doesn't have that power over him anymore. And I think that's where they were taking the story.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's one of those things that creates questions like this because the concept just didn't have enough room to breathe. And it felt kind of shoehorned in at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely thoughts I had where I'm like, oh, this is a deliberate message of how we can band together and like very relevant, like very timely, like deliberately timely messaging coming from how does, like, we don't have powers like El, but how do we still take down the Goliath? It felt like an intentional message was being conveyed. And for not having room to breathe is like, okay, so what is the message really? And it's not like I need a TV show to do all the work for me,
No.
which is why I was satisfied with it. But at the same time, like, I would like more clarity on like, well, how exactly do they feel about, is fear the greatest obstacle? And, having friends and building sort of this coalition of people who are afraid, like, is all we need is to just not be afraid anymore. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. But I think the whole point of the story they're telling here is that, the reason the Mind Flayer picks kids is because they're easy to manipulate, they're easy to frighten, and that all comes with this being a coming of age story and a childhood to adult transition story. So that all makes perfect sense. I mean, I see, to me it seems very clear what the message was intended to be. I just think that again, they were running against the clock and they had so much they had to close up in this final season. And honestly, they didn't kill enough characters, and that's I think that's a problem because as a result of not killing anybody, apart from potentially 11, depending on your interpretation, it means you have a lot more character arcs you have to wrap up, and
Right.
it cuts into screen time for everything else.
Should have
That's
just
funny.
let Steve fall.
No, never.
I honestly, by the time we got to the finale, I didn't think anyone was in danger.
No.
I was like, okay, we're not
Well,
killing our darlings. Like,
I remember asking 18 years ago whether the trio would survive Harry Potter. Because did it make sense, if they're the leaders of the war, that all three of them, if they're the head of the resistance against Voldemort, Voldemort's obviously very powerful, most powerful dark wizard ever, does it make sense that the three people most involved, the three top generals, if you will, which they aren't, but like, does it make sense they all survived? They all walk away from this? And with Stranger Things, you have a similar situation where there's like 12 generals. There's 12
Yeah.
really big characters, but like not even Erica Sinclair, not even the science teacher, I forget his name, but like nobody, even Murray's alive. I
I
think
thought Murray was going to jump.
Okay.
with the bomb.
yeah, I thought so
Did anybody
too.
else think that?
with with like into the helicopter.
Explosive. Yeah, I thought he was going.
Maybe. Yeah, I got that impression for sure. Yeah.
But not to go too much into Harry Potter, but if you look at it on the other side too, there wasn't a whole lot of casualties. Voldemort and Bellatrix, right?
Yeah.
Those are the two that come to mind.
And
I'm sure we
unnamed
could
Death
probably
Eaters.
find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are plenty of other baddies that we can point our finger at that make it through unscathed as well. And really on Harry's side, it's more just unfortunately collateral damage.
Hedwig. Dobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's interesting because to add to the discussion now, Rin also commented with a comparison. They say, I've been in a state of grieving since the finale. I know you talked about going similar feelings at the end of Harry Potter. I feel like the ending is as if Harry died. LOL. How do I cope? I feel so bad because obviously Eleven's fate is weighing very, very heavily. I think that a line that Eleven says that is meant to satisfy Hopper is also meant to satisfy audiences, which is that this is my choice. If I choose to stay behind the dying world, it will be my choice. And there's a bit of importance that I don't think enough time is given to the weight of that statement alone, that it's Elle's choice. And like, it's not like we're supposed to be happy about it, but if the actual like most shocking thing to me this entire season was the pregnant women. was what was going on with the pregnant women. This was an answer. It's tied to how 11 got her powers. We figured this out. It's through the unwitting participation, like the unwilling participation of pregnant women taking blood transfusions and being given Henry's blood, and all this stuff is then giving birth to these children with these special powers, which are all the children we see at the lab, presumably one out of the same thing. It's horrifying. In fact, I think exactly as much time is spent on the pregnant women as I can stand. And if a single other second was given on what the horrible thing that the government or scientists are doing to these women, I would feel like it was way too much. So if you look at the horrors of what Elle is trying to prevent, then her staying behind in a world where science can't get her, where the military can't get her, is actually the bravest choice she can possibly make. She's foregoing happiness for herself so that these evil people don't get to do more bad to all these women. Like, I don't know. I see her as a savior if she if she chose to stay behind, because she's preventing the same thing from happening again to a group of other people that we'll never meet.
Yeah.
To give Rin a little bit of hope, if you go back and watch the scene where Mike is telling the story, there is a little bit of flicker of light that happens, and we know that that was a signal in previous seasons for 11, right? So perhaps she's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I choose to believe that both are true, that she still made a really heroic, like self-sacrificial kind of heroic decision, but that she also found something that is suitable for her. Or we just, at the end of the day, we want our characters to find peace. And I think that what's interesting about the older group, Jonathan and Nancy, and Robin and Steve, is that, well, Steve in particular, we see is very happy coaching Little League, but like they each seem to come to an agreement in the scenes that we see that they're unhappy in their so-called peaceful existence. And that's why they say, let's get together. Let's actually interact more, because our lives now are missing what we had back in Hawkins when everything was going to shit. And it's that friendship and that interaction and that touching base and that community aspect of it that they seek. So I don't know. I like the idea that there was even time in the extensive epilogue for their idyllic lives to be imperfect, to be shown as being imperfect. But the solution to that is getting together again. And so we do want our characters to meet. We do want 11 to be back with the group. But I still think it's a stronger ending if we don't know whether she is or not.
Yeah, I think so too. And Florence, who's watching with us here on YouTube, says 11 was a true hero no matter your interpretation. I think that's right. And Eric, you alluded to this a moment ago. No matter what happens, whether she died or whether she just got, kind of relegated to this solo, solitary existence, she made a sacrifice. She gave up her life with the only friends she's ever known and loved in order to save everybody. And I think whether you want to believe that she's around or if you think that she's gone, I think that provides some solace, like understanding that 11 really got to have a few years of life where she got to experience normalcy and she got to experience love and friendship, and
it's more
all
than
these-
she was guaranteed given her
right.
existence from birth.
She was not going to have any of that before. That was not the intended path for her. So she got to have that for a while. And I think that offers some comfort, but I know it still stings. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously tons of other answers that we could be getting to, series long mysteries, but I think the Upside Down and definitely the origins of their powers were the big ones. There were so many character moments in the second half of season 5 that I'd like to pivot and talk about those before we wrap up our discussion.
Sure.
So we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the best character moments of the second half of Stranger Things and a little bit more about the epilogue. So stay tuned. All right. Well, the hype today is still Stranger Things, and let's now talk about these character moments. Micah, when I first got your reaction to the second half of season 5, you're like, man, there's so many heart-to-hearts. Everybody's having a heart to heart. You get all these characters paired up. They're in a broom cupboard somewhere. They're having a heart to heart. What's going on? Was that at times taxing for you, or which ones did you find most satisfying?
I think they all had something special to them, to be honest, and I do think that it was really kind of heartwarming in a way to see some reunions also, not just heart to hearts, but certain characters coming back together. I know we can talk about Max and Lucas,
Oh
and
yeah,
just the fact that Lucas never really leaves Max's side the whole time, literally and figuratively. I know he does have to dip out of the hospital every now and then to live life and help his friends in this adventure, but the loyalty of Lucas the loyal. I don't know if he's
yeah,
been coined that, but just to see how much he cares for her, and that he is just really relentless in making sure that she comes back from the upside down, the abyss, whatever we want to call it
mm,
now. I wasn't a huge fan of the Jonathan and Nancy scene. We can debate this. The room too was just
well,
what was that like?
yeah. The problem, and I did pop over to listen to fellow podcasters of ours called That Nerd Thing podcast, and they pointed out something that I couldn't quite put my finger on, which was there's not there's not really a defined threat to the wall melting away. Like they're not noxious fumes, right?
Hmm.
That they're breathing in because this matter itself is collapsing or changing state. There's this theory that they might suffocate if they were like in the middle of a wall, the way we see the dead bodies do, but that's not necessarily a threat. And then it just stops when they're done having their heart to heart. The
Symbolic,
liquid
isn't it?
stuff just
That
kind of
once they both
hardens.
come clean with each other,
Yeah,
it
so like
stops.
this, what is this emotion goo? Like you need
Right.
like they're in a prison of character development, and the only way out is to talk through their problems, and then the universe itself is like that's satisfying, that's good enough.
Yeah, I thought this was this was laid on pretty thick. I mean, it really felt like the Duffers were like, okay, we need to put Jonathan and Nancy in a literal metaphor of their
Yeah,
relationship while they talk themselves out of it. And I will say one theory that I saw that I did appreciate about this was that this was their own sort of secret that they were holding on to as well, that they both felt like they were suffocating in the relationship, but they were both too scared to come out and come clean about it. And that may have been something that Vecna and the Mind Flayer were holding over them in
mm,
a way. And so their realization and admission of the truth to each other is what stops the progress of the room melting. But even then, it that feels kind of like a stretch. I feel like this scene was pretty cheesy and too long,
Nacho cheesy.
honestly.
yeah,
Like
nacho cheesy.
given everything else that needed to be accomplished, I think we spent too much time on this scene. But I am so happy for Nancy that she ends up alone working on figuring out who she is. Because I know there's been this constant, like, we talked about this back when we first covered Stranger Things. Like, are we Stancy or are we Jancy?
Who are we here? Who do we ship with Nancy? And it's like let's ship her with
Yeah,
her own personal growth and development.
I'm so glad that it didn't go either of those ways. I'm happy for
Yeah,
her.
no,
Did
and
you
I would
think
agree. Yeah,
that this was going to be a death scene?
yeah, because again, they've destroyed the matter, or they've severely damaged the extra matter that's keeping the upside down in existence. And because we saw those corpses when we were walking into like the liquid room, I just assumed that one of those characters was gonna. I assumed they'd get their resolution, and one of them would die. So when it didn't happen, it's like, oh, this was just what the hell even was this? This was just
Mm.
like a metaphor, a
I
very on the nose metaphor.
had heard that she was getting a spin-off though, so I was saying to myself, how is
Oh.
she going to die here? And unless the spin-off happens within the Stranger Things timeline.
There were enough
Isn't it
jumps
a
in time between seasons to
isn't
really
the
get like
spinoff a book series? I don't think
Oh,
it's
is it?
a I don't
eh.
think it's a show. I don't think I don't think any of the prince like
Well,
I
we'll
get
see
the
once Paramount has enough to say about this or whatever.
oh
Whoever's
yeah.
buying the yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah, because there is something else that the Duffers are moving away from Netflix to do, right?
Yeah, I forget what that is, but I remember reading about it.
but I will say though, Laura, you were mentioning earlier how you knew entering the finale that pretty much everybody was going to be safe. After this scene, I said to myself, if they have now made the decision not to kill Jonathan and Nancy in this moment, the likelihood is that pretty much everybody else is going to be safe.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's not that Nancy's like expendable, but I agree there's like a tier of like, okay, if they're not going to kill any one of these characters, they're not going to kill pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I enjoyed getting because the Dustin and Steve relationship, I remember talking about this, was really strained the beginning half of this season, and I actually didn't like sort of how vitriolic it seemed to be between the two of them in the first half, but then kind of the way that it resolves this. I mean, they punch each other, they actually physically attack each other quite a bit,
Yeah.
which leads to a startling reveal. But the way in which sort of Dustin at the very end just breaks down and says, "I can't lose you like I lost Eddie," is really strong and really, really like just massive props to the actors for handling this because it felt true and it felt real and it was heart wrenching
It's
seeing these characters.
a complete contrast, right, to what's going on above them, right?
Yeah.
If you look, they're both resulting in some sort of truth telling happening, right? They're all kind of being honest with each other as the scenes are playing themselves out. But in one scene, you have a very physical confrontation, as you're saying, between Steve and Dustin, and then just a couple floors above between Jonathan and Nancy, you have more of this kind of heartfelt, open talk going on. So it's kind of cool to have that different dynamic happening
Mm-hmm.
within the same physical space.
Yeah. Man, Hawkins Lab has had some real emotional stuff going on at it for a vacated lab and an upside down.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were my sort of most satisfying, I want to say, character moments. But pretty much everybody has them. There's Karen Wheeler's sort of reintroduction and save the day. Holly Wheeler, still a lot of stuff happened with Holly the back half that I really liked. I felt like her
Mm-hmm.
character had a really good arc, and let's actually talk about that very briefly. So, not to get into the epilogue just yet, but there's that look forward that we get with the smaller children, and Holly is essentially the new Mike in leading, the next generation of kids. And I felt like the Holly character, despite the age inconsistency overall as a whole series, was nevertheless very strong. And watching Holly develop into a hero these last couple episodes, as she really took charge, was able to convince the kids that she was telling the truth, was able to protect the kids. I thought all of that was perfect. I thought all of that was
Mm-hmm.
really, really well established and executed.
I agree. Well, and I also think that Nell Fisher, who plays Holly, I think she delivered one of the other standout performances of the season.
Yeah.
Really, in particular, I thought she and Jamie Campbell Bower knocked it out of the park. They were the standouts to me.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that a lot. So, between that and like and these are like relatively new characters, right? Second half of the series, they really get their attention. But like somebody like then Will Byers, who has his coming out scene, which
Mm-hmm.
has been building all 5 or 6 seasons. The show I think handled both of them pretty strongly. Like, how did we feel about Will's coming out scene? Everybody had to be there. He said, "I'm not telling anybody anything until everyone that we ever met is in this room with me."
Right.
Including Murray.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
Murray had to be there. Murray doesn't care.
Was
Like,
was Hopper there? I don't remember Hop being there.
I think there was 1 or 2 absences.
Yeah, I think there were some absences, and then like Collie was there randomly, and I was like, I don't really okay. No, I mean, I think Will needed this because he needed the self acceptance that gave him the power at the end of half one. But then he also needed to have the acceptance from his friends and everyone that he loves in order to really sort of surrender whatever fear he had, whatever was blocking him from being able to do what needed to be done. I also feel like this is something that kind of felt shoehorned in just because they didn't have enough time to get to everything they needed to get to. So I like that they had the scene, but it felt very abrupt placement wise. Like, I almost wish that if they were going to do this, they would have tried to package it more with what happens in part one so that it's not like, oh, we get two separate will acceptance scenes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But that's just a writing thing, a writing critique that I have. But I do think that some version of this did need to happen. What did you think? Well, what did both of y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it wraps up. I think what's interesting this season for me with Will is there's two storylines going on with him. It's his self-acceptance and his sort of the gay angle.
Yeah.
But then also his mom stopping viewing him as a victim. And so that, we can talk, I guess, about Joyce and her sort of in the first half really being overprotective of him and kind of babying him to sort of the full scope of how far removed she is from that in the second half. Like he tells her off, I think, at some point in the middle there, and she just never stops caring, but like she really just backs off, and allows him to do everything he needs to do. And that said, when he comes out, she's supportive, which I think really matters. But it's interesting because there were two sort of, let's say, interconnected but opposite things that Will was going through, which is let me stand on my own, and also let me be confident in who that person is. And Joyce was such a big part of Will's character up till that point for being so protective that she finally kind of, I guess it just gets put into perspective for her that they all have a part to play in the final battle.
Yeah. Just going back to earlier, his self-acceptance is really key to his ability to enter Henry's mind in one of those final scenes, and also to help his friends fight and ultimately destroy him.
And he saves 11.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, temporarily until she decides to.
Until she has a choice to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's briefly before we wrap up, the sort of David and Goliath ending of watching all of them try and take down this giant creature, the mind flayer embodied, if we'll call it, was staggering to watch on screen. I mean, I saw this, I did go to like an AMC and watch this in theaters, and I was like, I would never want to watch this at home in my living room. Like, it was such an epic, big moment. They have to scale some cliffs so that they can throw some Molotovs off the side of the cliffs to get this thing. And they do it. And you know what? Like, if we hadn't spent 5 seasons already watching these guys just like take pointy objects to these various horrors that come for them, like I'd be a little skeptical about it, but it seems like it was pretty well coordinated of an attack on their part to like have the right firepower to bring this thing down. It still didn't feel like a foregone conclusion that they would be victorious. It really did feel like it was only because of every single player and what Will could do, what 11 could do, and what, all the leads that they have been gotten to that point. It really took everybody to take that thing down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did want to bring that up with you, Eric, because I was watching the finale at home, and I knew that at the same time you were in a theater watching it. Micah, did you watch from home or did you go
Home.
to a theater? Okay. I definitely had a sense in watching the finale. It was like, oh yeah, this they went all out on making this very cinematic. Like it is clear to me that probably the best possible experience for watching this finale was to see it in a theater surrounded by other people who were super hyped by it because I saw some of the theater reactions that were going on. Eric, how was your theater?
It was good. I think there were a few times when I expected somebody to start the clap, and it turned out it was me. That I was just like, after somebody, like, no, like I was that guy a couple of times where I was like, no, we should be clapping for this, everybody. Come on, guys. And then, like, I would get 5 or 6 other people across to do it. But then sometimes I was pleasantly surprised because somebody else started the clap. So, yeah, like just having that communal experience, seeing it in a group and clapping, what I actually came away from that thinking was because I find Stranger Things as a show to be just so polished. Like the episodes each achieve, like each chapter kind of achieves a whole thing at times that there were probably other episodes I would have really loved to have seen in theaters if it were offered. Like I got the distinct impression while I was watching this that there were other episodes I would have liked to have seen in the same way that I didn't. So I just think
Yeah,
it's a show that lends itself very well to communal group watching experiences.
agreed. And I say that, and this might be a bit of an odd comparison, but having done something very similar for 2 seasons ago of Survivor, and I was going to a live podcast, which was happening afterwards. But prior to that, we were all collectively watching the episode together. And there is something about having that community, about being around other people who are just excited to be watching, and just as much enjoying the experience as you are. And so I have to imagine that that was a lot of fun to be able to do with fellow fans of Stranger Things.
Yeah, definitely because the theme and the topic of friendship and stuff, and you're in a big group, it just feels like it felt like the vibes were stronger. It felt like I was being closer to the signal of being interactive. Because and there's nothing wrong with watching it at home. Like I've enjoyed most of the seasons, I think, just at home doing nothing else and by myself. But
The
yeah, this
battle was
particular.
awesome though. It was so well done in terms of you had, as you were saying, kind of all the key players, and without them executing their particular portion of what needed to be done,
Yeah.
you don't get the end result that ultimately we get in this finale. And the fact that you have some people who are working on the inside of the mind flayer, some people who are attacking it from the outside, and then you had Will, who was dealing specifically with Vecna through the mind connection that he has. So yeah, it was very
Yeah.
cool to see.
Well, something that was satisfying for me, and I said this going into the finale, if Kali doesn't have a very specific thing to do that matters and impacts the overall success of the final mission, I will be disappointed. And when she projects the vision of the children not being in the room so that Vecna thinks they're gone when in fact they're right in front of him, I was like, I had chills. I was like, can she hold it together? Can she hold it together? Can she hold it together? And then she did. And I was like, amazing. That's why she's back. That's
Yeah.
why 8 is back. And it also did something interesting with,
Did
11
you say
having a
then
sister.
though that her purpose had been served? And
I did. I did. It's a sad death scene. It's not one that I cried the most over, but at the same time, the fact that she was able to be there for that, I was like, that feels appropriate. That feels satisfying, and because we don't yet really understand how all the powers kind of connect. Vecna can do illusion dream things, kind of like what Kali can do, but he can't quite do what Kali does. So it's like an interesting flavor added to the spice rack of what we're watching on TV. But ultimately, I was just glad that they didn't bring her back to like not leave a loose end, while at the same time like she had something to do. She had a growth moment, and she ultimately conveys, I think, the stakes to 11 of what it would be like if they were allowed to survive and stay in the world, and that drives 11's whole hero arc this whole season. So yeah, I'm really satisfied with 8 and how her character was like handled, and the fact that she's back. I liked that one episode 4 seasons ago, but
especially
yeah.
because a lot of people did think that there was going to be some sort of sinister angle to her coming back, and that
Yeah.
didn't end up happening,
Like, why is
obviously.
she imprisoned by the military? Could it be for a good reason? We know if they did that to Elle, it wouldn't be good, but like, does she need to be kept at bay?
Yeah, there were a ton of fan theories going around that we should be suspicious of eight. You know, there were a lot of people who were taking Hopper's perspective of like,
Bad
this
influence.
bitch cannot be trusted.
Well, Hopper goes around and goes on his own little suicide missions. It's kind of unfair for
Yeah.
him to say Elle can't do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's like facing the prospect of losing a second daughter,
Yeah.
right? Which ultimately he does. You know, whether she lives or not,
Yeah.
Hopper does lose her. So that's kind of a full circle moment tragically for his character.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, I think they've been setting the stage the entire series to say that 11 can't exist in Hawkins.
Yeah.
There'd be too much attention. The military would never give up looking for her. So, yeah. Any other character moments we want to talk about pre-epilogue? I mean, I got to give some love to delightful slash dipshit Derek. Again, I know we talked about him a little bit in the last episode, but this kid just continued to deliver. I love him, and I really am gonna need to start using like dipshit Derek reaction memes for things when I have big feelings.
I mean, it was the most successful deployment of Suck My Fat One that I've ever seen on TV or on screen.
Or how about your mom?
Yeah.
Henry.
Where did you get this? Your mom. I was like, yes, kid, yes.
But no, when they're running in the cave and Derek, is being chased directly by Henry, I just that moment was huge. Yeah, it's amazing that I think one of the things that this show, I mean, that's what contributes to them having so many good characters that you can't even spend enough time with all of them, is the casting is just so strong for all of these characters that like you want to spend more time. And so Derek, who we did not know a season ago, is this enduring beloved character now, but also given the time to show his layers and shine. So
Yeah.
I mean, the epilogue showing everybody, even Derek, in various positions and happy and finding like something that he's good at, was very satisfying for me. We've talked a bit about the epilogue so far, but I just found it to be very deserved. I think that ultimately, if you do if you turn in a show as good as that with as satisfying a final battle as that, you can spend the next 45 minutes, the last 45 minutes, doing whatever you want. Like, it's fine. And I actually, as a matter of fact, liked what we got in the epilogue, but like nothing was gonna raise a flag or upset me, I think, in the epilogue, because I felt that all of these characters each had earned sort of a happy ending.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I felt that, and it was interesting because when I checked the timestamp after the final battle, I was kind of shocked that there was still 45 minutes left to go. And going back to what we talked about earlier, you're always waiting for that other shoe to drop. I think that's what Laura said, and I very much was expecting that as well. I think a lot of people were, knowing that you had that much time. You didn't think that you were going to spend 45 minutes with these characters getting their happy ending. You were just waiting for that one moment where things were going to switch and you were going to be pulled back into the upside down, or there was going to be some crazy moment with Will or another character. And the way that they wrapped it up, I felt was very wholesome, and there was that finality to it. And especially I love the scene where they're all putting their D&D books back into the shelf.
Oh,
And that to me said the book is closed. Like the series is
literally,
over.
again, it turns out direct
Yeah.
metaphors work really well for them.
For
Yeah,
these
and
characters.
I did
Yeah.
think you could have ended it there. I don't know that you necessarily needed the next generation, although that was cute. with Mike looking down on them, and he goes and he closes the basement door. I think they were having lasagna for dinner, but the point is like it felt good to wrap it the way that they did. I really I don't have any critiques about that.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was incredibly wholesome. And I mean, honestly, I was kind of anticipating that kind of ending, that they would end it with a D&D campaign and with them kind of closing the chapter on a campaign that they had been running for a while, and also that chapter of their lives before everyone gets ready to head off to college and whatever else it is they're doing.
It
Oh yeah, so Dustin's victory speech, the valedictorian speech about
Yeah.
squares and geeks, right? Kind of the main narrative that the show was going for all this time. Do we think is don't be a square?
Yeah. Well, also, he got to really pay homage to Eddie with
Yeah.
that. Because at the very end, he basically got to tell Principal Higgins to suck it, which is
When he's wearing a
exactly
shirt
what
that says
Eddie
like
wanted to
Hellfire
do.
lives or whatever.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and the fact that they all blow off going to a party with those girls to
Oh
go back to
yeah.
the basement
Hell
and
yeah.
That would
play
have been
Dungeons
what
and
they
Dragons.
wanted the most in the earlier years, you know.
And I think it says something that it's Mike that is the one who suggests that they do that.
Yeah. Well, and I like getting to see Lucas in that environment again, too, was really nice because he
Yeah.
had left Hellfire Club because he became a jock in the
Joined the
last
basketball team.
season.
Well, it turns out that the reason for him becoming so athletic was because he had to carry Max around in the final season.
Right.
He had to actually physically carry her. I was like, oh, it's so good he's been athletic now. It's so good that he's been working out. So he's got to carry Max,
Yeah.
who was
Well,
awesome,
and
by the way.
I mean, again, like those two, I
Sadie.
think also delivered fabulous performances, and I really wish we could have seen more of them. But yeah, I mean, I think I was reading in an interview that he actually did carry her for all those takes. So I was like, it's a good thing that you've been doing the sports team stuff
Yeah.
so you can be ready.
I thought it was perfect. Yeah. And in the epilogue again regarding Max and Lucas, like getting to see them kind of fall in love properly, like when you're not just together because of convenience or like physical proximity, but like actually begin to like each other's company in a way that felt like the next level of evolution. Just showing them a little happier, getting to live in their peaceful environment a little bit
Totally.
more felt good. So gosh, I know there are more things we could say.
There are a million things we could say.
Oh,
I mean,
uh,
there's, again,
how
this
many
is
Easter
10
eggs are in
years.
this series too? If you go back to the very beginning, that might be fun to do at some point.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure plenty of people have done it, but I'm also curious too, Eric, because you watched, or was it an initial watch or was it a rewatch for
Oh
you
yeah.
before tuning into season 5? And the reason why I say that is things probably are much more cohesive for you, and there are probably things that you can point to and you can draw upon that somebody who's kind of sporadically watched it spread out over 10 years just doesn't have that same appreciation.
No, it was nice catching up. I mean, I still think season three somehow is the smoothest of the seasons. You know, it's at the mall. It might be the most like deeply nostalgic. It might have the most like plot, but like if you think about that plot, like it has nothing to do with the overall big picture, really. It's like Russia light, and so you're not into the weeds, but you have enough of the characters where you like really enjoy it. So like that's my favorite season. But I agree, rewatching it, binge watching it in just a week or two, which can now be done with the whole series, I think you will get a lot of smoothness that otherwise, like, I think it's mentioned when Robin came out to Steve that they were both under truth serum. That gets actually like brought up during the conversation at the in the
Veretisar?
finale, but I would have forgotten that completely. Those were the circumstances by which Robin initially came out because it happened 3 years ago. It's like if you're not watching it in a binge capacity, you would absolutely have forgotten those little nuanced details. And like that, I thought it was an interesting like maybe that line exists to remind people that those were the funny circumstances. It's an amazing scene. It's a really great scene that initially occurs in. So I did feel like there was dialogue helping remind people. But yeah, watching this as a cohesive whole does have a huge reward behind it. It's something that feels a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there are definitely things that were set up. I know from very early on, if you remember early on in the first season, when 11, she's not fully verbal yet. And so she's trying to communicate where Will is. And she flips over the
Yeah.
D&D board so that it's just the black, back of the board. And she takes Will's little character, sits him on it, and she grabs the Mind Flayer figurine and sits that there with him. So it's very clear that the entire time the Mind Flayer was the bad guy. The Mind Flayer
Amazing.
was the big bad. So I think there are a lot of little Easter eggs where they kind of knew where they were taking this at a macro level.
Yeah.
That we could probably go back and pick up on now.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that too, because I remember seeing a post on social media, and it likely was from season one. It's of Mike and 11, and behind them on the wall is this poster of the abyss, like the actual structure that you see when before it kind of turns into this creature, just kind of the hive sitting there. And so you say, oh, this has been in the works since very early on.
Yeah.
Man. Well, let's close our own little D&D books on talking about this wonderful show. If you've joined us live, we really appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. Cody, Florence, and Rin as well.
Rin, yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for contributing live. And we will be talking about the latest in pop culture for some time left. Definitely find us, follow us, listen to our other episodes, check out our other Stranger Things discussions, and all of that using whatthehypepodcast.com or What the Hype Podcast on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. We are also on X as What the Hype Show. We're going to be talking about Percy Jackson. Isn't that right, Micah?
Yeah, we are going to be talking about season 2 of the Percy Jackson series, which debuted earlier in December, and we're about halfway through the season, I would say now. I don't know the exact episode count, but Pam and I did a primer just prior to season 2 where we talked with Mike Schubert of the Newest Olympian podcast, which was a lot of fun. Encourage folks to go back and give a listen to that. But I did my homework. Not only am I caught up on the show, but I've now read through the first 3 books, so I know how
Snap.
the show and the books differ. I will say the show is much closer to the books than those movies ever were, and I know that there's a lot of opinions out there on those films, but we'll leave it at that for now. And yeah, excited to talk about season 2 of Percy Jackson.
Love it.
Awesome. Super excited for it. Thanks, y'all. This was really fun.
I agree. Let's
Yeah.
I wonder if we'll start getting shows that are nostalgic for the 90s now.
Perhaps. I
Let's-
mean,
Let Stranger Things be the final 80s nostalgic look back show now that they've done it, right and proper, and now let's start getting nostalgic about Clarissa Explains It All
And Saved by the Bell.
and Saved by the Bell.
there we go. Yeah,
can't
Boy
forget.
Meets World.
Well, everyone, that is the hype, and we will see you next time.
See you next time, y'all. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Happy